This is All Quiet on the Second Front, a podcast where boring conversations around defense tech and national security come to die. Join me, Tyler Sweatt, and my Second Front homies as we dismantle the mundane and cut through the bureaucratic bullshit to demystify the world of defense tech. But be warned, this is not a typical government podcast. Are you ready to get weird? Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm your host, Tyler Sweatt. Welcome to another episode of All Quiet on the Second Front, the podcast where boring defense talk comes to die. Once again, I think I say this increasingly, we're bringing the big guns out today. We get the one and only Justin Fanelli, Acting CTO, U.S. Navy. Super excited to have you here, brother. So one, thanks for making some time to come by.
Thanks for having me.
And I don't think there are many people who aren't familiar with you, but for the one person who's listening who doesn't know who, Big J Fanelli is, can you give a little bit of your background? Kind of who are you? What are you up to? You know, when you say sort of like CTO of the Navy, what does that mean? What are you working on? We'll go from there.
Sure. I'm, I guess, fortunate to be here in this ecosystem at this time. Like, it feels like the public-private partnership wave is like really like upon us. So I've been at this for 25 years in some capacity, uniform, IC, DOD, and for a while there it was like DOD was trying to do everything themselves. Yeah. And so I just think everyone has acknowledged that we're not going to do this alone, that we are reliant, dependent, increasingly unleashing private industry, and it just works better. So this 1 + 1 = 3 situation is something that, like, a wave that I've been trying to ride. And I have awesome people around me and then awesome companies who are like making that happen. So who am I? I'm an engineer. Electrical engineering undergrad, systems grad, have been kind of like trying my hand at different problems, finding awesome people who are there to help solve them along the way. So did command and control, did infrastructure, did healthcare, worked in venture, have been teaching for a long time, and then did a lot of software for probably the last 15 years. Yep. And kind of along the way, the common thread has been, there's a little bit of a glass ceiling in the government, and you can go 3 to 10 times faster and be as effective or more effective. And so, like, when we hit a problem that's been intractable for a while, but like the ingredients haven't changed, that's been really fun. So like it seems to happen every couple of years, and then sometimes more frequently than that. But like, who am I? I'm someone who has been fortunate to be around when there have been like a confluence of problems, and around people who are tenacious and get it, and like we can seem to keep crashing through that glass ceiling. Yeah. So one of the hats is tech director for PEO Digital. It's a mouthful, but program executive offices are where the programs of record are. This is one within the DoD that has shifted in the last couple years to portfolios instead of programs. And so we say, like, hey, it's easier to be objective with cattle than pets. Portfolio management makes some good sense. If you're protecting your baby, then it's not always as outcomes or effects focus. And so we made this change so that we can be on the dollar, right? Like, where are we spending, and what are we getting for that? So there's the, hey, we've always done it this way, or here's what we've done in the past, and here's where it's gotten to us, and here's where we're going in 5 years. Just very waterfall stuff. Yep. Or we have to make changes. We have something to transition. We have something to shut off. It's way easier to do that within a portfolio. And so 2 of the PEOs within Department of Navy went down the line of this experiment probably about 2 years ago. And since then, it's just like a much more product and portfolio mindset. And that doesn't mean like we're developing products. There are some cases where we are. There's some cases where we're hardening commercial products or just unleashing. But between the user focus, the branding, and the more kind of quantitative mindset, it's been going awesome. So who am I? I'm someone who enjoys portfolio management at this point as an engineer.
Yeah. So, you talk about changing the way some of these PEOs think about velocity and transparency and data. How have you gone about, bringing some of that
hey, we're gonna show the metrics, right? We're gonna keep score. We're gonna track progress, and we're gonna have that be something we talk about. That's a pretty material cultural change, where, not a Navy thing, but I think most programs have been a little bit more maybe elbows out. Hey, there'll be some metrics in. You've been championing a lot of, hey, no, we're gonna have the dashboard that shows like, hey, this is on track, this is off track, here's why. What's that sort of been like? Because I think most folks that hear who are sitting in, a startup or a company, you're watching a bunch of these key metrics. You're thinking about how does that relate to achieving an objective, to the relative sort of your cash burn, your velocity, your head count, sort of all of that.
Yeah.
It's not a normal thing in the government.
No. So like,
it's a very new thing in the government.
So I've been around some pretty awesome leaders. I spent some time with a couple Secretary of Defenses. I've spent some time with a couple incredible PEOs, and then the IC, and then I think my time at DARPA kind of opened up my brain, where I said, okay, we know that moonshots exist, but how do they exist in government, and what could we do on the right side of the Valley of Death? Because there's a lot of stuff that's happening at the left side, but what can we do from a pull perspective? And so we all know that there's a lot of cool projects happening in industry and in USD R&E. Do we spell out acronyms here?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So the research and engineering folks are launching cool capabilities, DARPA, but catching them, we have great quarterbacks. Our ability to catch those kind of varies. And so if we're being super, thoughtful and honest and humble, where are our best wide receivers and our best tight ends? And to this point, we have really good ones out there. There are people who can catch. The question is how can you tell who the best catchers are? It can't just be the loudest people or the best storytellers. That matters. But how are we scaling that? And so for me, because I'm a nerd, it comes down to numbers. Yep. And so we tried to start breaking this down. So first thing we did was we said, okay, let's not be thought leaders without any evidence. So let's do this first. And so we had done it before. We did a healthcare thing where they said, hey, it's going to take 24 months to 36 months to move these things in the cloud. And so I was like, why would that be? It's pretty complicated. Okay. And so then we had a security issue, and they said, oh, you're not gonna be able to move to the cloud. What are we gonna do with this data? We're gonna throw it away. That's a terrible idea. These are our options. How long do we have if we can really surge? Something unrealistic, 90 days. Okay. So we took 200 people for 90 days, 93 days, 16 hours a day, got it done. Cheaper, better, just better, right?
Yep.
So in kind of cost, schedule, performance, or cost to value, which is how we like to measure it. And so that happened. Let's baseline what that looks like. Let's take some telemetry under that. Let's apply that at the whole portfolio level. And so what we did was we said, okay, let's do some pilots. Let's make some of this stuff proven and then easy. And so those are our steps, right? Let's look at 3 years ago, PEO Digital did 2 pilots, and they were awesome. They went really well. We have a lot of people. A lot of them are doing operations and maintenance. We have a couple unleashed mavericks, and they said, we're going to do things. So they ran with it. That stuff got into production. We said, how high can we scale that? They're like, we'd like to do 5. And I'm like, let's do 25. And so we did 25 concurrently. We did 1 the old way and 24 the new way. And the 24 with 20% of the staff of the 1 went a lot faster. I won't go into how much faster, but they went significantly faster. And we said, okay, what is working? And so, and because it's not necessarily this level of tenacity and acumen isn't necessarily scalable, because they're all trilingual. It would be hard to scale that. People scaling is hard, but can we break this down into a structured process? And so that was one of our first ACDCs. Yep. Accelerating change design concepts. Yep. And so we said, let's do structured piloting. And how do we get out of the way of structured piloting? How do we let industry put that forward? And so instead of us pulling only for like what structured pilots ideas would come through. We said, here is how we measure. And so I'm finally get to the measure part. Here's how we measure. You tell us what will make the biggest impact. And so we said, here's the process, but like we talk about process a lot. Here is a convergence on how to do this.
Yep.
And then let's make it so easy that people of different experience levels and acumens can run that through or handhold, and let's put the energy and excitement and incentives of industry to work and funnel that. And so when we asked for those 25 pilots originally, I thought we'd get 50 entrants, and we got 150 like right off the bat. And then now we get like dozens a week, where people say, I know what the needle is. This is what we've been waiting for. I will show you how we'll move the needle.
It just changes the whole way. Just one, culturally, how you guys think about prioritization and resource allocation, but it changes the way the team is thinking about it when they come make the ask, which I think probably is more impactful and just has a bigger sort of like compounding effect on organizational change.
It's catalyzing that, right? So like how, like who has more people, industry or the government, right? Like and who has clearer incentives. And so if we're saying like, here's what we can do, but like a lot of this is law, regulation, policy. If some of that changes, like that's great. But we already have fairly clear incentives with industry. So if we say, hey, like we're open for business and all you have to do is move the needle, which you want to do anyway.
Correct.
Like I don't know anyone, like these Cybermill stories, like that's, no one gets into.
Those are outliers
like
on the curve.
no one gets into this business to do that. Like if you're gaming it, that's like something has gone wrong. But like if we can show how we are easy enough to work with and the friction is removed to the point where it'll never be fully removed, right? Like that's not what we're going for. We're going for, can you see that the needle is moving and who is the best at moving the needle? Yeah. And so like our main job there was to design or provide the needle and show people how to come in. And so when we have like 400 of those, instead of KPIs, KPPs, where you may have heard this before, but sometimes the government is very prescriptive and says like exactly how to do something. Yeah. That is not the most creative way to go about things, right? And so if we say, hey, KPI, KPP, 120-year-old industrial metric, if you know what you want, right? Like if we know we need this much manure or the fence to be this high to keep the cows in, then we can do that. If we have more methods, there's more irons in the fire, and we don't know or we don't want to specify, for good reason, how, but we know what moves it. Like sometimes you have apples and oranges competing to make the difference. We need to be that flexible and that agile. And so like we're not alone, right? Project Linchpin in PEO, IE, and W&S, like they're awesome. Like General Barker is like getting after it. Admiral Akano at Navwar is opening, hey, how do we make sure that the people who want to run faster, who want to use outcome metrics, not input metrics or activities. I'm really busy, super interesting. You didn't get anything done. And so how do we make sure that we're standardizing that and spending less time on definition and more time on results? That's what we're after.
That's awesome. And how does that, right? It's a good like handoff point. You know, you talk about the flexibility and sort of not having that, you know, not being super prescriptive with the needle and collaborating there. So then take that and talk about what has that changed or how has that helped when you think about, you know, not just engaging with industry, because I think there's a lot of engagement, but like collaborating with it. Is that sort of allowing you guys to be more, you know, decisive or better velocity or more, like what does collaborating look like there?
Yep. So it looks like tough love at times. So we for like the longest time, so like I remember being like 23 and no longer in the Air Force and in the government, and we'd have like a business meeting, and I was like, what came out of that? And they're like, we're going to meet with them again. And I was like, this could go on forever. And I was like, this must be an outlier. And like a decade in, it was not an outlier, right? Like you just talk and you're like, I think something's going to, like, how are they paying for an engineering and sales force to keep talking with us without like a clear trajectory for a contract or results? Like this, okay, this is just like there's a lot going on in this ecosystem, but like it's not all clear like how the needle moves.
It's like if Pavlov never fed the dog. Bell's just fucking ringing.
So we're like, why don't maybe people have thought about this before, but like, can we just like simplify the bases so that we can run them? And so we have the investment horizons, which is to say like we've defined the scouting market, and so like with that going up from 4 VCs in 2019 to 168 defense-focused VCs.
Crazy.
And like defense play now, like so we're 42x over, and IRAD, and including the hyperscalers and all of the art. So like there's all this funnel innovation, right? And so how do we do the adoption part well? We don't need to talk about innovation. It's happening. We can signal better. We're doing a little bit of that. But within Horizon 3, how do we get people into Horizon 2 faster? And so essentially, like in the older example, we had hundreds of entrants, and we said, okay, we only really have time to do 15, let's do 25, let's just work harder, surge. And then from there, we are engaging with them. We told them drivers wanted in government and drivers wanted in industry, because like there just needs to be more driving. The Go Energy is on demand, and so in demand. So the idea of pulling more of them through and saying, let's do design thinking, but then also like, let's just like, I don't know, psychological safety, or just like let them go and think through and see the problems as themselves, so that we're not doing translation. Like translation is friction. And so where in that they found a new way, like they knew the line between Horizon 2 and Horizon 1. They knew it was going to take to scale. Let's show a business case. You have to be not 20% better, because like people don't make changes for 20% better unless it's like a super critical thing, or like, are you twice as good? We had one that was like 5 times as good, and that's how you pull them through.
It rocks. So when you think about communicating that back and in, right? So clearly industry will react well to that, right? And has reacted well to it. Hey, I understand, right? You've given me a degree of clarity, some sort of standards to go ahead.
It's
how
working.
Do you, how do you turn around though and help to bring that organization along where you really start to just increase the spread of where you're breaking down hey, my job is, I'm the small business engagement officer. Well, what do? I meet with small businesses all day. Okay, well, what happens after you meet with them? I don't know. I meet with them all day. My job is to meet with them. How do you take like office space out of DoD innovation?
Okay, so every smart market is a two-way market, right? And so like we originally started just internally, and we're like, hey guys, we're going to move the cheese and measure you on outcomes. And they're like, some people signed up for that, right? And then there was like some resistance, like you'd expect. Industry, obviously, they're like, hey, all of the ones who wanted to get after it were like, great. It's a little bit more work, but now I have clarity. Let's go. And so one thing that's happening is industry is coming to both the accepting and the resistant folks with the same packages. They have the lean business case with the outcome-driven metrics. And so they're saying, I'm moving the needle, even if the government people aren't asking for that. And so like that simplifies the problem in the first place, because like you have people who are like looking to date in a very specific structured way now. And then on the intake for the portfolios, we're now saying, hey, like life is prioritization. And so like you're doing all of these things, but how much of that is like what you want to be doing or what we should be doing? And so we're prioritizing the portfolios based on their outcomes. How do we scale that further? If we say, hey, this portfolio on $1 billion is producing $2 billion in value, and we can show that in some sort of mission outcome, and then this one, they can't really quantify it. Like that increasingly becomes a problem the more times you measure different groups.
You got like some psychological gamification in there too. Like, oh, you can't get us that. Cool. They got us that.
It's more exciting. It's more gratifying. It's better feedback. There's not like, I'll just tell a personal story. Like I have had very cool supervisors for a long time. I rarely get any, I've rarely gotten like a ton of constructive feedback. If you're in the market and you don't perform well, I suspect, and my friends, and like when I've done business, like you get a lot of feedback. Here's what we need more of. Yep. It's if you don't know where the needle is, it's harder to give feedback unless you're just like a great people person. And so when we've gotten partnerships with OpNev N1 on top level requirements, where they're pushing forward, they're saying, you know what, you're right. Let's go up to a higher level. And here's how we're going to measure these based on outcomes. It's going to be a K curve. Some are going to perform better than others. And then you can look at it and say what's working and what isn't. And so that's kind of like the economics side of it, including outcome-driven metrics. We're also doing the telemetry side, where we're saying like, oh, it looks like this effort is resulting in more resilience, or this effort is resulting in more uptime, or this effort is resulting in hundreds of thousands of man hours saved because there was latency and now there isn't anymore. Yeah.
So we're going to turn the conversation a little bit as we sort of like head towards what I'll call, the last leg here. Before we get to sort of the final, what I'm really interested to see your answer, right? We've just gone through an election. From an apolitical standpoint, I think whoever won the election, we were going to have a new administration. We're going to have new folks coming in. As you look out, talking about sort of all of the change that sort of we've been driving across the Navy and throughout your career, where do you see, opportunity for a new administration, or what are you optimistic about or hope you see? Okay. I said it a broad way to give you latitude there, not trying to do like an I gotcha on party politics or anything.
Sure. So we've been at Operation Cattle Drive for some time, and so like we have structured divestments. We want to do more of those. Turning something off in the government, we all know, is very hard. Reagan turned off 4 programs after wanting a lot. Bush was going after smaller programs, medium-sized. He went after 250 or so and got 8 little programs. I think it was like 50 million total saved. Yep. Divestment is really hard. Yep. And so within Department of Navy, this initiative that we've done, we've kind of like cleared the pathways, and we've done some of that, and I think we'd like to do more. And one of the ways we're doing that is designating enterprise services. So you have a lot of DevSecOps environments. Yeah. In some cases, 1,000 flowers have bloomed, and or they're not blooming, right? Or there's just but we don't need 1,000 pots.
There's a lot of flower pots on the ground.
Right. And so what does that actually look like in terms of streamlining? So, an era of divestment could result in divest to reinvest in a much bigger way. So that's exciting. Yep. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you've read about AI recently, but
heard about it.
There are a couple things happening.
Yeah.
We need to be so much faster at adopting that smartly than we were with the cloud.
Correct.
We're 18 years into the cloud, and one of our team's projects just won Government IT Program of the Year. So Cosmos last week won the Government Program of the Year.
Congrats.
They're an awesome team.
Yep.
They are making things that should be easy, right? But if things that are easy everywhere else are hard in the government, it's going to slow everything down. When I visited Cuba, the food was awesome, and there are all these interesting things to see. And I was like, hey, where do I get water? And they're like, you buy soda. And I was like, no, sure, but I like water. And they're like, that's a little tougher. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, just tap water is better? And they're like, no, you can't drink tap water either. I'm like, where do I get a bottle of water? And they're like, you go to the pizza shop, you ask Ted. He has a yellow poncho. He will walk you down to a place. They should be able to get you a water.
The water guy.
And I'm like, how is the most important thing, the highest rep thing, the hardest thing to get?
Yep.
And so you see teeth rotting, you see long lines at the grocery store for soda. Yep. If we don't make AI with gas and brakes smartly better, then we're going to be slow adopters, and that's scary.
Yeah. That's interesting. We make it it's Cuban soda. I'm gonna steal that now. All right, last question. Big, unstructured, can take this anywhere you want. Justin Fanelli, king for a day, sitting up on the big throne, waves the wand, changes one thing, what do you change and why?
I'm a team person, so like we're turning this the throne into like a bench. We're bringing a bunch of intersection thinkers up there.
So it's like King Santa. You got everybody sitting on your leg.
Or like
tell Justin what you want for Christmas, kids.
And I think so for me, like having worked in defense and IC for a long time. It's just like I think this is like obvious to most people, maybe not everyone. The tie between national security and economic prosperity in this country like is inextricably tied, right? And so like there are win-wins in a way that I just think we don't always acknowledge. And so like an interesting like cybersecurity parallel for just a second is if you made something more secure for the first 15 years of my life, like it just was worse performance.
Correct.
Like you were like trading something,
Correct.
right? And now there are win-wins. Like the stuff that we've done with Zero Trust, we are making it more secure, and at the data level, it is improving performance because like you don't have like more firewalls to slow things down.
That's right.
Win-wins exist if you're in the eaches and nuanced and looking at the data and making things happen, right? And so if we look at the defense sector, not as a sector, but a launch pad that says, hey, across the board, here is how investments and some of the R&D and some of the opening the door for performers dual use tech is helping everyone. And we're telling that story and we're looking at, so here's the answer. With our mission partners and with within the US government, more than just DoD. If we are able to standardize the way that we talk about pulling and innovation adoption and making economic decisions based on outcomes in a streamlined way so that we don't say, hey, there's a policy that, there's a law that we all have to write our own policy and we define these in different ways. If we could single up on here's our common definition of investment horizons. And let's open the door for Vannevar Bush days where even like academia and researchers, like they don't want to be measured on H-index. They don't want to be measured on like how many papers they publish or how much they're referenced. They want to be measured on like, are they making an impact? Can we pull the impact lens all the way through? So for every dollar in a PEO, you have some sense of, or every million or billion, that like you have some sense of what we're getting for those. And then we can piggyback. And so we can share that with NATO and share that with AUKUS and due diligence and like deconflict. So if that whole kind of like larger story was a more outcomes and economic story, then I think we could move a lot faster and connect together in a way that we are kind of like dividing that I think is not helpful.
It brings more like robustness and resiliency to the ecosystem as well,
and
right?
it's measurable because it's
100%,
measurable, right?
yeah.
And it's simple.
But it aligns those instead of, it's simple. It's exactly right. It's simple, it's transparent, and it is a good North Star for everybody to sort of align against.
Because the North Star might move. Like it's self-correcting.
Yeah.
Because like you're like, oh, we did this and we got a little bit better, but then something changed. Yep. Something changes, right? Like it's American. Like we don't have a 100-year blueprint. We need to adapt. But if we're still adapting and measuring two things at once, hey, is this more effective and is it secure? Like we can move that together as a unit and then like be more collective in our effort.
Yeah. Dude, that rocks. Like I say it every time I spend 5 minutes with you, is I could do this for like 2 days.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Roll it. 2 hour.
Could not be more of a fan, dude, of you and the team and the change you're driving. And I'm so grateful just to have you sort of driving that change from inside the organization. So thanks for being you. And thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me.
That's
awesome.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Boom.